All right, kayak safety gear. Let's dive in. Picture this. You're out on the water, sun shining, you're paddling along. It's pretty idyllic.
It is.
But to keep those good vibes going, you got to be prepared. And that's why today we're doing a deep dive into the gear that will not only make your kayaking adventures fun, but safe.
Absolutely.
We're taking cues from the Motor City Paddle Club's Kayak Rentals podcast, pulling out all those nuggets of safety wisdom so you can paddle with confidence.
I think a lot of times people overlook the fact that feeling safe and actually being safe are two very different things. You might be a strong swimmer, you might feel confident in calm waters, but kayaking can throw you some curveballs. I mean, wind currents, other boaters.
You're at the mercy of the elements out there.
Exactly. So let's start with the non-negotiable, the personal flotation device, your PFD.
Okay.
This isn't just checking a box for the Coast Guard. This is literally your lifeline if you end up in the water unexpectedly. And I think it's really important to think of it as an insurance policy for unpredictable situations.
I'm sold on the PFD, but what about the paddle? I mean, it's attached to the kayak, right?
Well, not quite. I mean, a strong gust of wind, a clumsy maneuver, and all of a sudden your paddle is drifting away from you.
Oh, no.
So that's where a paddle leash comes in.
Uh-oh.
It seems like a small thing, but trust me, you don't want to be swimming after your paddle in the middle of a lake.
Oh.
Plus, if you don't have a paddle, you can't maneuver the kayak. So it really compromises your ability to, navigate wind or current.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I've heard that a tangled leash can be dangerous, though.
absolutely. You need one that's long enough to give you freedom when you're paddling, but not so long that it becomes a tripping hazard or it can get snagged on something. There are different types of leashes out there, coiled ones, straight ones, quick release ones. Finding the right one for your kayaking style is really important.
So we've got our PFD, our paddle is secure.
Yeah.
What about staying dry? I mean, getting a little wet is part of the fun, right?
Yeah, sure, a splash here and there is fine. But if your kayak takes on a lot of water, it can really affect stability. And in colder conditions, hypothermia becomes a very serious risk.
Okay, so like bailing with your hands isn't going to cut it.
No, not efficiently. That's where a bilge pump comes in. It's kind of like a mini water vacuum for your kayak. Manual pumps are really simple and reliable, but if you want something faster, there are even electric bilge pumps out there.
Electric bilge pumps. Fancy. I never knew those existed.
Technology marches on even in the kayaking world, but whether you go manual or electric, the goal is to get that water out of your kayak quickly and efficiently so you can focus on paddling, not sinking.
Makes sense. Okay, so we're floating high and dry.
Yeah.
But what happens if we need to get someone's attention? Do we just yell really loud?
While your vocal cords might be impressive, a whistle is a much more effective way to signal for help. It's going to carry further and cut through wind and waves. And think about it, you could be miles from shore, or you could be in a fog bank, and a whistle is your lifeline to being heard.
I actually heard a story once about a kayaker who got caught in a sudden squall and capsized.
Oh, wow.
He was miles from shore, couldn't get anyone's attention until he remembered the whistle that was attached to his PFD, and a passing boat heard his signal and was able to come rescue him. True story.
See, that's why we emphasize these things. A simple whistle attached to your PFD so it's always accessible. That's preparedness in action.
Okay, whistle acquired. What about those little unexpected mishaps? Should I bring a whole roll of duct tape?
Duct tape is great for a lot of things, but, for those minor cuts and scrapes or even a nasty sunburn, you're going to want a proper first aid kit. And it's not just about being prepared for the obvious, but also thinking about environment-specific risks that you might face.
Right, yeah. I once had a first aid kit that got soaked because I didn't put it in a waterproof bag. Soggy bandage is not very helpful when you need them.
That's right.
So waterproof packaging is key.
Yeah, a lot of us have learned that the hard way, I think. And dry bags aren't just for first aid. Keeping essentials like your phone, snacks, extra clothes dry just adds a huge level of comfort and peace of mind when you're out there.
Right, because who wants a soggy sandwich?
Exactly.
Now, this next one is a bit of a mystery to me. A spray skirt. It sounds like something you'd wear to a kayak fashion show.
I wish.
What is it?
It's actually a waterproof cover that seals the cockpit of your kayak. Kind of like a raincoat for your boat. It helps keep you drier and warmer, especially in choppy conditions or rain.
So it's for sit-inside kayaks then?
Exactly.
I guess sit-on-tops are already pretty exposed.
That's right. And with a spray skirt, it is important to practice with it beforehand.
Okay.
You need to be able to quickly release it in case you have to make an emergency exit.
Good point. So we're prepared for minor injuries. We've even got fashionable rain gear for our kayaks. What's next on our safety checklist?
Let's talk about navigation. You might think, hey, I've got GPS on my phone, I'm good. But what happens if your battery dies or you drop your phone in the lake?
Oh, man, I'd be lost. Literally. I guess technology isn't always reliable out in the wilderness.
Exactly. That's why it's really important to have backup navigation tools. A waterproof map and a compass are your old school but essential friends in this scenario.
Okay, map and compass check. But what if something happens and I need to call for help? Hopefully not, but, just in case.
That's the smart way to think about it. Being able to communicate in an emergency is super important, especially if you're paddling alone or in remote areas. A cell phone in a waterproof case is good for close to shore trips. But for longer ventures or open water, you might want to step up your game.
So what, like a walkie-talkie?
Not quite. Walkie-talkies have limited range. For reliable communication on the water, you'll want a VHF radio.
Okay.
They use specific frequencies to transmit and receive signals, and they have a much longer range than cell phones, especially in those tricky over-the-horizon situations.
VHF radio. That sounds serious. I've heard those mentioned on boating shows, but I always thought those were just for big yachts and stuff.
Nope. They're becoming more and more common for kayakers, especially those who paddle in open water or challenging conditions.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list. But let's say the worst happens and someone ends up in the water. What then? I mean, I'm a decent swimmer, but I'm not exactly a lifeguard.
That's where some basic rescue equipment comes in. A throw rope, for instance, can be a literal lifesaver.
Oh.
You throw one end to the person in the water, they grab hold, and you can pull them back to the kayak.
That sounds kind of like a cowboy lassoing a runaway calf.
Ha! In a way. But seriously, it's a simple tool that can make a huge difference in a rescue situation.
Okay, throw rope noted. What about a life vest for my dog? He loves coming along on my kayak trips.
That's adorable and safety conscious, absolutely.
Heh.
A canine PFD is a must for any four-legged kayaking buddy. Just like with humans, it provides buoyancy and makes it easier to get them back in the kayak if they take an unexpected dip.
Perfect. Now let's talk weather. I usually just check the weather app on my phone before I head out. Is that good enough?
It's a good starting point.
Uh-huh.
But for kayaking, you want to dive a little deeper. Look for marine forecasts specifically. They provide details like wind speed and direction wave height, water temperature, all things that can significantly impact your kayaking experience.
I once went kayaking on a day that started out sunny and calm, but the wind picked up out of nowhere.
Oh, no.
Suddenly I was battling waves and struggling to paddle back to shore. It was pretty scary.
That's a perfect example of why those detailed marine forecasts are so important. They can help you anticipate challenges and make informed decisions about where and when to paddle.
So checking the forecast isn't just about avoiding a little rain. It's about understanding how the elements can impact your safety on the water.
Exactly. And beyond the weather, it's also crucial to respect your own limits.
Okay.
Don't push yourself beyond your skill level, especially in unfamiliar waters or challenging conditions, right? Even if your buddy wants to paddle to that cool island miles offshore, sometimes it's smarter to say, hey, maybe next time.
Exactly. Knowing your limits and listening to your gut feeling is a key part of responsible kayaking. It's not about backing down from a challenge. It's about choosing adventures that match your skills and experience.
Okay, so we've talked about gear navigation, communication rescue, even canine safety. But what about those situations where things go wrong despite all the preparation?
That brings us to one of the most valuable safety tools you can have knowledge. Knowing how to handle yourself in different scenarios, from self-rescue techniques to basic first aid, can be the difference between a minor inconvenience and a major emergency.
I guess you can have all the fancy gear in the world, but if you don't know how to use it properly, it's not going to do much good.
That's exactly it. Investing in training is just as important as investing in gear. There are courses, workshops, even online resources that can teach you valuable skills, like how to ride a capsized kayak, perform a paddle float rescue, or even administer basic first aid in a remote setting. So where can people go to find these resources? Are we talking like wilderness survival camps or something?
Not quite that extreme. Many local kayaking clubs and outfitters offer safety courses and workshops.
Yeah?
For instance, I know Motor City Paddle Club has a whole section on their website dedicated to safety and education.
See, that's where that Motor City Paddle Club podcast comes in handy again.
Right.
They're like a wealth of knowledge for all things kayaking. I bet they cover a lot of these safety skills in their episodes, too.
I wouldn't be surprised. And don't underestimate the value of practice. The more you get out on the water and hone your skills, the more confident and prepared you'll feel in any situation.
So it's not just about learning the theory. It's about putting it into practice and becoming comfortable with your gear and your abilities.
Exactly. Building that muscle memory and those instinctive reactions is key to staying safe on the water.
All right, so we've covered gear knowledge, weather, even dog life vests. What else can we do to ensure those kayaking adventures are safe and enjoyable?
It's almost like a mindset, a way of approaching kayaking that underpins all those practical steps we've discussed. I would call it respect for the water.
Respect for the water. I like that. It sounds almost philosophical.
It is, in a way. It's about recognizing that we're not in complete control when we're out there. The water has its own power, its own rhythms, and we need to be mindful of that.
So it's not about like conquering nature, but more like working with it.
Exactly. It's about understanding that those seemingly calm waters can change very quickly, that
Yeah.
wind and currents can create unexpected challenges, and that wildlife deserves its space.
It's funny. I remember taking a kayaking course years ago, and the instructor said something that's always stuck with me. He said, the best kayakers aren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest, but the ones who can read the water and adapt to its moods.
That's a great way to put it. It's that awareness, that ability to observe and respond to the environment that really makes all the difference in staying safe. And it ties back to something we talked about earlier, knowledge.
Right, knowing how to handle yourself in different situations. But I guess it goes beyond just knowing the techniques. It's about having that deeper understanding of how the water works.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that every kayaking trip is a learning experience. It's a chance to deepen your connection with the water and refine your skills.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into kayak safety, what's the one key takeaway you want listeners to remember?
I would say that safety isn't about eliminating all risk, because that's impossible. It's about managing that risk intelligently. It's about being prepared, being knowledgeable, and most importantly, being respectful of the power and the unpredictability of the water.
Beautifully said. So as you plan your next kayaking adventure, remember, it's not just about the gear you pack, but the mindset you bring with you. Paddle smart, paddle safe, and most importantly, paddle with respect. And hey, if you want to learn more about safe and enjoyable kayaking, check out the Motor City Paddle Club Kayak Rentals podcast. They've got tons of great tips and insights over there.
Happy paddling, everyone.